Hey, philosophy students, just going to go over some fallacies tonight. This is Monday's lesson, but it's Sunday night. So I'm just going to go over some verbal fallacies that we've been dealing with, and then we're going to look at Rene Descartes' Meditations I in terms of epistemology, the study of knowledge. How do you know what's true? Okay. What is knowledge? Typically people will say it's justified true belief. It's something that's true and it's something that you can justify. But continuing with our fallacies, okay, that we've been looking at. The first one is going to be called grammatical ambiguity. Okay, so if something is ambiguous, it's difficult to ascertain. It's not clear. Some things like that. Okay. For instance, if someone asked you what it was like doing school through COVID-19, you might say it was ambiguous. It was difficult. It's hard to explain all the different feelings you had as this was going on. All right, so let me give an example of grammatical ambiguity. Okay, sometimes these are fallacies, things that are spoken, things that become maybe even controversial, that we don't really know what the meaning is of the person who says it, or maybe the person can actually, if they do a uh-oh publicly, they can backtrack and say, well, what I really meant was this. So let me give you an example. I like Leslie more than Laura. I like Leslie more than Laura. What does that mean? I like Leslie more than I like Laura? Or I like Leslie a little bit more than Laura likes Leslie. See, that statement taken in and of itself could really mean either or, right? So it's ambiguous because of how it's grammatically presented. All right. So someone might say, you took my comments out of context, which was another one we dealt with last time, when in reality they weren't clear at all, right? That could mean one of two things. Or how about this one? The proposal is favored only by the workers who are eager to get something for nothing. Now, this is the story of a comma. Okay, some of these things are easier to see when you write them out than when you actually say them. Does it mean that the proposal is favored only by the workers, comma, who are eager to get something for nothing? Does that mean it's favored by all the workers and all workers favor to get something for nothing? Or does it mean that there's a group of workers who want to get something for nothing, unlike the other group of workers? See how that works? So both of those statements are grammatically ambiguous. Okay, so that happens a lot. More so with the spoken than with the written, but it can happen both ways. There's another fallacy known as juxtaposition. Now, this is the idea that you put two things together, statements together. You don't say that they're connected, but because of how you say them or how closely you say them in reference to each other, someone might assume that they're connected. For instance, did you hear that there was a shooting in the neighborhood last night? Oh no, yeah, I heard that. Well, hey, did you hear that Ray bought a shotgun the other day? Now, someone, I guess theoretically, could just be talking about two completely different things, but all of a sudden you may assume now that Ray had something to do with the shooting in the neighborhood last night. Now, the person might be saying Ray bought a shotgun because there was some danger going on in the community, and they might be saying, well, that's why Ray bought a shotgun a few days ago, or the implication could be that Ray was involved. So either way, when you see juxtaposition, you could assume or make assumptions about something, or kind of throw something in there without actually saying it. Okay, we looked at some headlines in the paper about Scandal Rocks, Torrington, Connecticut, or just Connecticut in general. The governor resigns is written right underneath it. The governor's resignation may have and not have anything to do with the scandal, but this is kind of a similar thing. Okay, so those are two verbal issues that we can run into. Another one is something called an enthymeme. Now, this is when I believe I posted an assignment under logic for this for you, where this is a missing premise. It's you say two sentences, and you're assuming that the person that's hearing you will make the connection. I hate her. Tabby is a cat. Okay, so the missing premise there is I hate cats. Tabby says a cat, therefore I hate Tabby. Okay, but just by saying those two things, okay, I think one of the illustrations used in the assignment I gave you was Tim is the principal. He deserves respect. The missing premise there is principals deserve respect. Okay, Tim is the principal. He deserves respect. Why? Because principals deserve respect. Okay, therefore Tim deserves respect. So that's the enthymeme. And I'm going to go back to an illustration. I don't know if you heard it, but it was a commercial for Peppermint that I used to kind of talk about some of the fallacies in this. But let's revisit it again. Folks, you may not realize it, but I still get very nervous when I have to go on camera. Therefore, I need every bit of security that I can get. Peppermint contributes to my feeling of security. It makes my teeth white. Therefore, at least I don't have to worry about my teeth when the camera comes in for a close-up. Okay, a lot of missing premises here. For instance, I still get very nervous when I have to go on camera. Therefore, I need every bit of security that I can. So having a feeling of security helps you to be less nervous before the camera is the missing premise. All right. Why does this matter? You might say, well, geez, this is really picking things apart, spoken and unspoken. It is. And a lot of times the argument or the disagreement isn't even with what's said, it's what's assumed behind the scenes with the missing premise. See the problem? If you don't identify and pull that out of the shadows, then you may have trouble actually seeing through what's happening and actually communicating a problem. So that's why enthymemes and verbal ambiguity and juxtaposition, these are big things to pay attention to. And in our society today, people are going so fast, right, with all of the, the social media that we have, the instant news, that we don't have time to slow down and do these things. But if you do, you may find out that you have an advantage over everybody else around you. If you can learn this skill to do this, this could be a real benefit for you. It'll help you to think clearly, and people will find your input valuable because you're able to do this. As our attention spans grow shorter and shorter, it's even more important that we train ourselves to be able to do this type of thing. Okay, so that's kind of the logic part that I wanted to look at tonight as far as the fallacies that we get involved with. The other part now, as we go to epistemology, so we've been looking at Plato, okay? Now we're going to turn our attention to Rene Descartes, okay? It's not Descartes, okay? It's Descartes is how you say that, Rene Descartes. And he is going to be the father of modern philosophy, and it's really in the area of epistemology that he does some pretty interesting work. So I've uploaded Meditations I, which is a primary source for you to kind of look at. But here's what he did. He asked himself, and maybe you're asking yourself now, what can I be sure of? Is there anything that I can be certain of? So he's looking for certainty, okay? If I can be certain of something, let me build my life on that. Let me build my knowledge on that. Let me build everything on that. So what he said was that he was going to doubt everything that he has come to believe since the time he was little, and see if he can poke holes in all of the things that he thinks and commonly accepts as certain. Okay? So he sits before the fire, and he does this in his mind. It doesn't really say how long this took him, but he did this. He did this. He doubted as much as he could. Okay? So one of the things that he talks about in the meditations is this idea that things appear real to him when he dreams, but they're not real. So he's deceived. Things that appear real are not real. So those things can be clearly doubted. If those things can be doubted in the dream world, then why don't we doubt those things in the real world when they happen to us? Okay, when we think something's happening. Well, then other people might argue, about math. Forget about your senses. So Descartes clearly says your senses can deceive you. The illustration that's used a lot of times is you walk up to water and you see a pole in the water. Think of a pool if you've ever seen a pool. A pole sometimes when they vacuum the pool, now of course you have the roaming thing on the bottom of the pool. They used to have poles, maybe they still do, that you you vacuum the pool. I wish I had that problem. I'd like to vacuum a pool right now. Although it hasn't been anywhere near warm enough to go swimming, right? But the idea that as you look at the pole, it looks bent under the water, doesn't it? And then when you get close to it, it could be a stick even, you realize it's not bent. It was your senses. There was kind of an illusion happening there where it wasn't true. It just looked like it was in the water. So Descartes says that your senses deceive you. That's just one example. You look out from a distance, sometimes you think you see something. I remember 2 summers ago, maybe, I was looking out my back window and I saw something and I'm like, what is that? I could not figure out what it was. And it was moving and it was alive. And I'm like, it's just my imagination. It's trees and there's probably a squirrel in the middle of it. So anyways, I walked away, come back, it's still there. So finally I looked, and what it was a fox, like a good sized fox, gnawing on something. And I'm like, wow, not a squirrel. And I had to look. I just kept looking longer and longer to make sure I wasn't deceiving myself. So we do this a lot with those types of things. I maybe I've told you this, but I remember when one Sunday morning years ago when my kids were little, I mean really little, I heard this noise. It sounded like this air, like really loud air, like hissing. I'm like, what the heck is that? So I got out of bed and I looked out of my window, and all around my house, all I saw was these hot air balloons with people in them. I'm like, what is happening? And the more I thought I was like imagining things. I'm like, am I still dreaming? Am I really seeing this? Is this a joke, right? So what had happened was, true story, was that they had a hot air balloon launching up at the Goshen Fairgrounds. And as they got up in the air, there wasn't enough of a breeze to push them along or to get them where they needed to go. So they had to make emergency landings. And they were making emergency landings in my neighborhood. There wasn't enough room in my backyard for one to land, but it was landing in our neighbors' yards, and we were going down, and that's what it was. And here's my kids are so little and they're watching cartoons and all these fantasy, like, wow, this must happen all the time, right? And it and it didn't. But one of those things I really was like, am I really seeing what I think I'm seeing? So Descartes said, well, they said, what about math, right? That you don't really use your senses there. Math is reason, it's rational. It seems certain, right? Descartes goes, well, how do we know that there's not an evil deceiver deceiving us, thinking that these things are true, and that they're not, that there's just an evil deceiver up there giving us false senses of everything? How do we know that? And then he finally got to the idea. He said, you know what? That could be true. There could be an evil deceiver. My senses could be wrong. My reason could be wrong. But there's one thing that can't be wrong. I'm doubting these things. Therefore, I exist. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. I do not need to doubt my existence because there's an I that's doubting. And as long as there's a doubter, as long as there is doubting, there is a doubter. Okay? I think, therefore I am. I can be certain of that. So because of that, I'm going to build everything else on that. So because I can be certain of that, I bet I could be certain of some other things too. And so then he gets into this idea of rationalism and says, math is so clear and precise and real like that it just hits you. And those are things that are real, okay, that we can count as certain and sure. What this does, so a lot of people pushed back and said, you don't need to battle your own existence. It's so obvious that you it's so clear that you don't need to even debate it or doubt it. You have a conversation. How do you know I'm real? Who are you talking to, right? So you get into this absurd kind of thing sometimes. But Descartes said that it was truly the rational process that told him there was a reasoner or a thinker there. Now others say that he didn't need to do that. That is elevating rational reason, I should say, elevating that to being the primary way that we know we exist and the absolute foundation of knowledge. And many say that's way too giving rationalism too much. That you don't have to say I think therefore I am. Rather, I am therefore I think. So the old joke goes, Rene was putting Descartes before the horse. Little philosophy humor. But that is the real school of thought. So Descartes was a believer in God. But what this does for a lot of people's in a lot of people's minds is it raises reason, okay, above, and that's what you ground all certainty in, is reason, rationalism. Okay, so rationalism, the Plato, the most real thing is not physical, right? That it's the forms, it's those things. Descartes, reason is the primary foundation of all knowledge. So this is going to be the biggest division in philosophy, is this battle between reason and empiricism, okay, which is the idea that your senses give you the most reliable part of information. We'll talk about that next time. But it's the big one, probably between free will and determinism and rationalism and empiricism. It's one of the major debates in philosophy. So I uploaded, I'm going to share my screen with you for a second. I uploaded the Descartes Meditations I. Let's see if I can access for you here, and I can. Okay, so this gives you a little summary of his epistemology, okay, where it kind of goes through a little bit of what we just talked about, so you can read that. Then this is a primary source. It's not long, and you can tell all your friends, all right, you can tell them how smart you are, because you're not just reading books and chapters about philosophy. You go right to the source and you read Descartes yourself. So when you are 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, you can tell people, I read Descartes in high school. I read Descartes and I read it for myself. Well, here you go. Here's 2 pages. Okay, you read Meditation 1 and part of Meditation 2. Okay, so I'm impressed with you already. All right, now the questions here, all right, there's 5 of them. Just answer those questions, okay? A lot of you are printing it and writing it right on there and giving it back to me, which is great. At least one student will probably have this done by 2 o'clock this morning. You know who you are. The rest of you, and don't feel bad if you don't, okay? You may not even see this till Monday morning. So work on that, okay? And it talks about it's not a lot of reading, and I think you'll get it. I really do. I always found Descartes somewhat easy to understand. Plato I always found easy to understand. Socrates, but I think you'll be all right. So that's kind of the lesson for today. And I'm going to think this week about a extra credit type of thing or something like that, where we have a little Socratic circle, because I need to see people. It's tough. It's tough for me. I need to see students. I need to know you're out there. Anyways, so I hope you're doing well. And I hope you're hanging in there. You're establishing some sort of routine. And hopefully we're going to be out of this. I just saw a headline that said they're having school in Israel, and the students aren't allowed to share pencils or anything like that, but they're actually back in school. Something I don't think is going to happen here for sure. But anyways, hang in there. Email me if you need anything. Okay, my heart goes out to you. I'm thinking about you all, and I'm on your side. I'm cheering for you. You have it a lot harder than I do, because most of you are seniors. And those of you who are juniors, you're probably wondering, is this gonna be like this next year for us too? And I hope not. So anyways, I hope all's well, and let me know if you need anything. Okay, talk to you soon.